What's up, everyone? Check out what's coming up this week on Legacies.
I don't know. Shouldn't the beaver come out of the ground and tell us? Or groundhog? No? Is that only...
Hey, I got some Callywut. It's like, really? What, this French?
Yeah.
This is BC.
Wes, are you excited about the Stanley Cup PLayoffs? You're not a big hockey fan.
I could fucking care less. No.
Hey, what's going on, everyone? Welcome to Legacies. I'm your host, Tom Ritchie, joined by Wesley the Wizard Bowles. Wes, how you doing?
Not too bad. I feel like I'm in a comfortable temperature today, but you were telling me you're not so comfortable.
Fucking muggy as hell, and I try to make sure that the AC and shit isn't running because these mics pick everything up, right? Yeah, it's muggy. It's gross. This weather is just fucked.
It has been up and down recently. It's not been very consistent. It's been hot one day, cloudy the next, a little bit of rain, a little bit,
Yeah, and now we're into June. When is summer? Like June 20th? When does it start?
I don't know. Shouldn't the beaver come out of the ground and tell us? Or groundhog? No? Is that only...
Is it... Beaver. Yeah, summer's here. I think we're thinking groundhogs, and that's something to do with... I don't know. I don't pay any attention to this folklore shit. I have no idea. Although when I was a kid, I was mesmerized by the Farmer's Almanac. You remember I mentioned that with Alana, right? Outdoor growers. Yeah. I'm like, oh, you got a history of family farming. Yeah, when I was younger, I don't know why my mom had those magazine racks beside the Chesterfield, and there was a Farmer's Almanac in there, and I don't know why it would tell me like planting seasons and this much rain coming and all this stuff. And I'm thinking back, going, why the fuck was I even interested in that? Like, I don't pay attention to the weather at all. The app lies to me constantly, so I don't do that at all.
I used to get my my weather knowledge, not so much what's going on with current weather, but mine wasn't the Farmer's Almanac. I learned everything I know about weather from the Magic School Bus.
The Magic School Bus.
Familiar with that show? Your kids probably watched that.
I feel bad for those. My buddy Jerry, he's a firefighter, and like all firefighters, they have fucking side businesses. I shouldn't say all, but a lot. But he has a lawn care company, and he does some landscaping and this stuff. And because of his schedule, he has to choose which day he's cutting. He keeps his clientele somewhat small so that he can get them done in a day with one extra person helping. And I'm thinking this year, I'm like, you can bank on that day, and then all of a sudden there's going to be rain. And now your entire week is fucked, which is horrible for me being selfish, because when we do get to do stuff like, go to the lake or anything like that, I'm banking on those days that he has available in between.
Right.
And he's sending me photos all the time, fucking grass, and it's like long, and it's, burrows of fucking dry grass down the centers. And he's so anal about it, he'll clean it all up and rake it, right? With no extra charges to the customers. And I'm thinking, yeah, it's not quite how I would do it. I'm fucking with my mic a lot. You're going to get mad in the post-production, but I got to get it right. There. How's that?
It's okay for the next 5 minutes until we touch it again.
This is good. don't fucking touch your mic, Tom, you fiddling bastard.
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah, it's not normally it's not normally the mic. You like to fidget with the cables.
It's these cables. These, this is probably why I dropped out of high school. I couldn't sit still. I fidgeted. I couldn't pay attention. There was no diagnosis back then, ADHD, ADD, DHA, any of this, when I was in high school, and it just didn't exist. It was, that kid's fucked. We need to put him in front of the principal's office for the day. And I, of course, would escape. I was an escape artist. I got out of there quick. Anyways, so something interesting that I'm hoping you can correct, because we have an audience, and the audience happens to include the OCS. And we made a mistake presenting some numbers a couple weeks ago. But one of the things, thank you, OCS, for paying attention to the podcast and what we say. We know we can be hard on you at times, but we get it. And we understand everything you have to go through. But anyways, if you could correct, I don't even remember exactly what it was, but they were kind enough to, very kind, the way that they reached out. They used our support channels and said, hey, you guys fucked up.
Yeah, so I think we'll preface this as well about, we are a media platform, I think it's very important that we are accountable when we do make mistakes like this. I'll also jump in and say I don't think it was our mistake. I think it was purely my mistake. I was the one reading the
I'll take
information
it.
off the
Hey, we're
screen.
50-50, baby. I'll take
Yeah,
I'll take it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this data was, especially with everything going on in the industry right now, I think it's very important that data like this, that's so important, is not misrepresented. So we want to make sure it's as accurate as possible. It was Amanda Winton, communications manager at the OCS, who reached out. So thank you again, Amanda. But here's the data that we kind of messed up and we want to correct from not last week's episode, the week before, episode 13, I believe. So we had originally said in that message, in that episode, that the brick and mortar stores generated 54% of Ontario's total sales, while the OCS.ca generated 30%. This is not accurate. So that is not what the actual report had said. It was, those numbers were actually representative of what, I'm just going to reread this here, what she said, which illustrates where consumers go for cannabis-related information. So of everyone surveyed, 25% chose a cannabis seller as their primary resource for information. Now, if we break that 25% down, 54% of those folks who chose cannabis sellers as their primary source for information chose to go to in-store, chose to go in-store for answers. 30% of those people chose the OCS.ca for that information, and then 14% chose a retailer's website. So our mistake there for reading that report where it was just laid out in the report, we looked at that, and again, things happen fast in recording of episodes. It seemed to us, we had perceived it as the sales data for the breakdown of that sales. So our apologies for that. OCS also wants to make it clear that OCS.ca does not make up 30% of total Ontario sales. The last time they pushed these numbers out, they actually, that was not included in that report. But the previous time that they did release that information, the OCS.ca sales represented less than 4% of total sales, which makes a lot more sense now that we're thinking about it. So
yeah.
Again,
and
Amanda,
where can they find these? Where can they find these reports? Because you can. There's an entire report to look at, and it's graphical.
Yes.
And
Yeah, so the I believe the report is on the OCS. Regardless, I'm going to put it in the description of our YouTube, our Spotify. We're also going to go back and add some labels and corrections and comments to the previous video on that episode as well, just to make sure that it's absolutely clear. So again, our apologies, Amanda. Thank you for bringing this up to us and giving us the chance to correct that. So
look at us being accountable and all mature in this media space.
I don't think it works if we're not humble about it, but
No, it's a good call out. Obviously, anytime we see certain statistics across the industry, we try to highlight it, and we want it to be as accurate as possible. There's a million moving pieces all the time.
The other nice thing I'll note about that in there, it wasn't just the OCS reaching out and saying, hey, you made a mistake, can you correct that data? It was Amanda and the communications team also pointed out that they feel they could make the data a little more easy to consume and easy to digest. So they saw where the confusion came from and are taking that into account in their next report, which is nice as well. Regardless of it being an error on our part, they do see where they feel they can improve how they lay things out. So that's always nice as well. So
yeah, well, I mean, they do a fantastic job. Again, we joke around and poke fun, and there's a lot of pressure, I'll say, from David Lobo down, and getting it right. This isn't easy. We're still 5-6 years into it. There's a lot of room for improvement. Flow through, I think, is the biggest call out. Like, thank God for that. Or we wouldn't see some of the brands. In Ontario, everyone thinks, oh, you guys have access to so many. Yes, we do. However, there's a lot of producers and brands we do not have access to, and without flow through, chances are we wouldn't have access to even more of those great brands. So we think that's that's brilliant.
For all intent and purpose as well, the OCS could they could just send out a single page PDF with written 2 big paragraphs explaining all their data, but they go through the effort of putting that beautiful report together as well. So which they don't have to do, but they do anyway, and it's very insightful. So anyway,
Wes, are you excited about the Stanley Cup playoffs? You're not a big hockey fan.
I could fucking care less. No,
what?
I really.
How did I know? How did I know that would be your answer? I too am kind of in that camp. I mean, I paid a lot of attention to it years ago, and even more previously. but I do love the good old hockey game. So I'm going to be this bandwagon jumper again. Now, don't get me wrong. My favorite teams are Canadian, starting with Vancouver Canucks. Unfortunately, they did not make it into the Stanley Cup playoff. Well, sorry, they're in the playoffs. They didn't make it to the Stanley Cup final. But second to that is the Oilers for me. So it is nice to see, I cut my teeth in hockey when Wayne Gretzky was the fucking the superstar he is, right?
Right.
And, of course, they've got Connor McDavid and a bunch of other great special players over there. But anyways, they're in the Stanley Cup. I'm excited about that. It gives me something to come back to. Like, I don't watch a lot of hockey anymore. So I'll watch the Stanley Cup as much as I can, not like die hard, and World Juniors. If you want good hockey, that is good hockey, because these guys are all striving to be in the NHL, and they have been drafted already. But that is some really good hockey. But you know who is a big fan?
Ian?
Well, Ian's a big fan of hockey, but he's a Detroit Red Wings fan. I'm thinking more Tyler over at Organics, hard Oilers fan, and for good reason. I mean, he's in Alberta, so that makes sense.
I think of the 3 meetings we've had with him, he's always had some form of jersey.
Oh, there's always, yeah. And if you follow any of his social, there's, I think through his personal account potentially, but it's like game day, Oilers shirt on, game day. It's, there's something going on, or game night. And we've been doing a little bit of work for Organics and, getting them spun up with a swag collab, that sort of stuff. Just a great overall humble dude. Also, he was nominated 30 under 30 at the Grow Up, which is cool.
Yes,
I don't know.
That's right.
I haven't
He was
seen
also
any
nominated. There was a second nomination. I can't remember what that was for. He was nominated for something else as well.
Okay.
Maybe.
Processor of the Year.
Yeah,
something
Processor
like that.
of the Year.
Yeah, and I haven't
Something
seen
like
the results. Mind you, much to my chagrin, I have just not even gone and looked. And I should. There's just so many things. But anyways, as we've been doing this work with Tyler and Organics, and, very craft, he's heart and soul into his cannabis, but he's got 3 mainstays he sticks to. And now I'm just like, I want these more than ever. And unfortunately for me and you, it's not in Ontario right now. I'm sure we can figure out a way to get it. But Pineapple Express, homage to the movie. It's one of my favorite movies of all time. Yes, I'm that kind of guy. And Orange Sherbet, and then Sweet Tooth. And I'm going through it. I think I mentioned it to him on the last meeting. I'm like, dude, I've got to figure out how to get this. Like, let's just figure this out. And we always, as much as we can, pay for our own cannabis supply. But anyways, huge Oilers fan. I can almost guarantee he will be unreachable Saturday, Monday, Wednesday,
all those games.
Friday. Yeah, just leave him alone, right? Anyways,
while I'm not into hockey and stuff like that. I do understand the significance of this game or this series for the country. I think we haven't brought home a Stanley Cup since 93, 94?
I'm not sure. And I think the Oilers, I don't think they've won a cup since 1990.
I don't think a Canadian team has brought the Stanley Cup home since 93, 94.
Shameful.
But at the same time, I don't, I kind of suck it up, Canadians, because I'm from England and we have not brought the World Cup home since 64. So,
yeah, you know what that feels like.
Let's,
the Leafs got a little closer this year, I think. And when I was younger, I was a diehard Leafs fan. Of course, right?
Yeah.
I do love the Leafs. I don't follow them and jump on that, Leafs forever, Leafs Nation, that sort of thing. And, you like the Habs, fuck you, and butting heads all the time. I don't do that. But when I was younger, it was the Leafs. And my first game ever was the Canucks versus the Jets in Vancouver.
Yeah.
It was like 84. I think the Expo was going on out there at the time. Very cool. But anyways, excited for that. I have something to do Saturday night. I live a very sheltered life. And I'm also in pain. I'm feeling this morning, I made the very, very dumb decision. I try to get into the gym. I don't go hardcore. I got to move, right? I wake up in pain every day. And if I don't get to the gym, just do some rowing, go through even just the motions. I show up. This morning, I'm like, haven't done chin-ups in a while.
Smart idea.
Yeah, real fucking smart. So I do those. I think about, I don't know, the 6th or 7th, I feel all the connective tissue between my ribs just going, yeah. So now I'm fucking all screwed up from that too. Jesus. Anyways, you were mentioning something about, so you being a big SpaceX fan, isn't there a launch coming up?
Yeah, tomorrow SpaceX is doing test launch number 4 for Starship. For anyone not familiar or living under a rock, Starship is
That's me.
The biggest man-made flying object in history. It's the biggest thing to ever get to orbit. So
Wow.
tomorrow will be their 4th test launch for that. So I think that's at 7 a.m. Central, 8 a.m. Eastern time.
Okay.
Yeah, very, very big deal, this launch. It's
And what are they doing with it? Where is it going? Is it just going to orbit? What are they, like,
so the plan is to test re-entry tomorrow properly. So they will launch. The booster will come back and land in the ocean this time. It's going to do a soft touchdown. What they're trying to do is test, because the ultimate plan is that the booster comes back down and the tower that launched it has 2 arms and will eventually grab it and put it back on the pad. It's fucking outrageous. You need to watch these videos on the Elon's
I still
plan.
remember when SpaceX was becoming a thing, and just the fact that it could, detach and then land again.
Right.
I was
right.
like, what
so
the
they're gonna catch this booster, which is the size of like a fucking skyscraper for all intent and purpose. Back on the, but they're not doing that tomorrow. Tomorrow they're going to do a soft landing in the ocean with a virtual tower. So they've set up a virtual tower where it's should land, and then the actual Starship itself will come and re-enter the atmosphere over Hawaii and do a touchdown in the ocean as well. They're testing the heat shield tiles and can they actually make it back because they've made their own heat shield tiles.
That's
huge expensive.
Like,
but
holy shit.
Falcon 9 launches and all their Starlink subscriptions pay for most of SpaceX work, right?
Yeah.
Most of the work on Starship is funded by SpaceX itself from the work they're doing there. I mean, SpaceX is doing 90% of the mass that goes to orbit now is SpaceX from the planet. 90% of everything, all the mass that goes to space is SpaceX, which is crazy.
Well, we need Starlink. We need Starlink. So if it's funding it, I did. So remember we were talking about a certain concept and we would need mobile internet, strong mobile internet. I didn't realize, I haven't looked at Starlink in forever, probably 2-3 years ago. I was looking at very rural properties and I'm like, I can't live without internet. I have to have internet. Anyways, so there is a mobile option to that now. And apparently the cruise lines are switching over to Starlink. You remember how bad the Wi-Fi was on the cruise ships? Like, just atrocious.
Yeah.
Anyways, they're switching over to Starlink as well. But the subscription for it, I think a monthly fee is just shy of $200 a month, which isn't bad if you need it. And I'm thinking motor homes, traveling around,
right.
And you need access, and you want strong access. We get used to it. I think that's the biggest issue, right? We forget the days. I don't even know if you ever experienced dial-up, but holy
I did. Yeah,
shit.
I used to have AOL. It was
oh my god.
Yeah,
like compared to where we are, and it was fast. We thought, oh, this is fantastic. Look at this image loading in 4 minutes.
Well, yeah, websites were smaller then too, and it didn't take you weren't loading as much, but yeah, it took forever. If you were to try and load a modern day website
different.
insane. But I mean, yeah, Starlink's got 6,000 plus satellites in orbit now. That's how many of them there are, and every next set.
Wasn't Elon Musk though talking about space junk like 5 years ago and how much there was, and now he's just got how many fucking satellites out there?
Here's the thing with those satellites: they're in very low Earth orbit. And they have the ability to deorbit themselves if necessary, so they will burn up on reentry. They can fire their thrusters and come back into orbit. If the thrusters, for whatever, fail over time because of how low the orbit is, it only takes, I don't know this number off the top of my head, I believe it's like a couple of years, and they will actually deorbit themselves and just naturally burn up in the atmosphere. So
at least he thought of that. Compared to the days of Sputnik, those things are still up there floating around.
There's some big space debris out there still, and it's not the big stuff you got to worry about. It's the stuff that's the size of pennies and things smaller because they're traveling like an hour. Exactly, and it's just so
crazy. You were talking too about a report that is it a report? Stratcann, David over at Stratcann had published. What was that?
That's from this morning. So
this morning.
Again,
okay.
On the heels of reporting inaccurate data from the OCS a couple weeks ago, I'm going to be very careful here, and so don't take
Let's
what I
read
say
it
here.
verbatim.
You should read this article from Stratcann and David Brown. Don't take my word for it, but it looks like a producer, which one here? So it's iNaturally Organic Inc., MPrize. So they have a CBN soft gel. CBN is CBD soft gels. And it looks like, I'm just reading through here, Health Canada has issued a recall for this product, given that there's presumed presence of, and I'm going to butcher this name, hexahydrocannabinol. Cannabidiol.
Cannabidiol. But
which it seems like it's a synthesized synthetic CBD with intoxicating properties. So it looks like they've had, of the thousands and thousands of units that went out, they've had 3 complaints across the three product SKUs. And because of that, and apparently through the testing, there's been actually nothing's been found for that chemical compound, but a recall has still been issued. So I just thought that was very interesting. That it got me wondering why I wanted to bring it up was because, do you think in your mind, and maybe this is a question for Harrison, and again, please read the article because there's a chance here stuff I've said
we'll post the
not
link.
Correct, but
go read the article.
My question for Harrison would be and this is completely hypothetical. Let's say this all turns out to be something completely different, and it's not, this product does not contain this chemical, and a recall has gone out, and there's permanent damage to this brand now because of this. Does the brand have grounds here for going back at Health Canada for a wrongful recall? It got my mind churning today, and I just didn't know if that's something that would be possible, or I don't know. Yeah, just it could be very damaging for the brand, especially since they have no evidence currently that that chemical compound is there.
It's certainly interesting because we've seen recalls. I mean, hell, Days of Ample, we helped handle recalls and getting those out. It seems they go in waves, right? So yeah, there's, X brand is having an issue in a recall, and then, it just becomes water under the bridge. People seem to forget that there was, and in some cases, I do recall there was one very prominent recall. I think it was 2019, won't mention the brand, but they were using banned substances, and it was hidden in the ceiling tiles, and they were using banned pesticides that you were not allowed to use. And they found it was literally hidden. So the facility knew they were using it. So that caused a major issue. I don't recall, again, see, like it becomes water in the bridge. You forget about it. I mean, any brand, it doesn't even have to be cannabis. They'll make a big fuck up, and then, over time heals all, I guess. Right. But it's a good point. If there were, because it's not even just the brand rep and the potential of decreased revenues in the future, it's that those recalls are expensive.
Yeah. And damaging. And let me just read this quote from iNaturally there, just because it's their statement. And I want to make sure we capture that as well. iNaturally Organic prioritizes the health of its customers and is investigating Health Canada's assertion of presumed presence of HHC, despite no evidence of HHC in the products from analytical testing laboratories working with iNaturally Organic. So I just wanted to make sure we read that because they have submitted a statement on it. But
that'll be interesting.
Just an interesting
I think the hard part that we see is there's no, and I think it's around the packaging requirements and regulations, is you'll have a lot number, and that takes you so far. But when there's a recall, where are they publishing it? Like, I personally would love to see some interconnective tissue between the retail or medical platform you've purchased on, so that I get some sort of notification. But you don't see these sort of things, like, in the Bevelk space, in any other consumer packaged goods, there's, Costco. Costco has a recall on a product. You get emails potentially. It's posted when you go in the stores, all this. For cannabis products, we're seeing a disconnect where that information about a recall may not be hitting the end consumer due to the regulations, right? There's no direct conduit to be able to provide that feedback. I mean, the Gazette, I don't know where the hell they publish everything other than, Stratcann. And I can tell you the vast majority of consumers, if you're not in the industry, you're not no offense, but you're not following Stratcann. You're not following us, right? Potentially. So how is that information getting communicated to the consumers? That's why I would love to see more reform when it comes to that, so that maybe there's something that can be scanned on the bottles or the packages. Direct line of communications at the retail levels. Obviously, you can set accounts up or memberships up with various retail locations or companies, but rarely do I get any information, right? And it's just due to the regulations themselves.
And it says here that the advice that Health Canada is giving for anyone who purchased that product is obviously stop using it immediately until they find out what's going on, but to either destroy it or return it to the store they found it from. And some of these batches go back to 2022, and I'm like, okay, so you're going to return it to the store you bought it from, but
and is there any monetary compensation involved?
No,
retailers don't want to do RTVs half the time.
Right.
It's just that's a good question. We need to follow up with that and understand what that recall, we understand the recall process up to the point where it's issued, but I still think there's a broken telephone here in between retail and consumer.
I'm going to share something with you right now because I just searched for that on the OCS, and I think this is not a great page for recalls. So it says, this is a page here I'm going to show you. This could use some improvement. This is their page for what do I do if a product has been recalled from a consumer's perspective. That's it. Contact our customer service line. To me, there's a ton of information that could be added here.
But also, how am I as a consumer? Again, I'm coming back to notification. Where is it seen? Again, if I'm not in the cannabis community and entrenched like we are, and I still miss them, right? And I'm in this every single day, as are you. How do you find this information? How is it getting out? It's not on the radio, right? It's not on air quote TV. I don't think it gets published in any papers. So where, when, how? I want to follow up on this, and
they're probably that's the thing though. There probably is some of these resources, but the fact that we don't know about it off the top of our head is an issue. I think that's what we're pointing out. Right?
Well, let's find it and we'll correct it as much as we can. Let's OCS can probably help us with it, and we could use this channel if need be to help communicate certain recalls. But I don't want that to come hard on brands, because in a lot of cases there's investigation that still has to happen to understand if it's an actual recall, right? Anyways, good call out. Now I'm all confused though. But I also, me, problem solver, I'm like, I got to figure this out. How do we fix this? I'll stack that on the other million things that we've got on the go. I'm super excited. Listen, we've got Kevin McBride from Kootenay's Finest today. And me being me, I've gone in and done some research. There's some things that I want to pull out, but Kootenay and that area was where a lot of draft dodgers ended up back in the 70s. Okay. And they went to cannabis cultivation and they just started growing, and it was fields. So think, Emerald Triangle areas, Humboldt regions into Cali, come in most cases, law enforcement waits. Okay. When they, I don't know if you know the stories of this. So helicopters flying around farmers' fields, doing the things they do. So it would be no different than in BC. And I want to understand if Kevin was ever involved in any of this, but they would rappel down and they would wait until, late August, early October, harvest season, right? They're going to wait because the plants are at the maturest, they're easier to see, they can smell them. And not unlike, Jamaica and some of these other regions in the Caribbean, they come in and they would just either bleach and just take them all down. And they would rappel from the helicopters like SWAT teams and just take the shit down. It's like, anyways, so Kevin's from Kootenay, and he's been in the industry a long time. And I want to get some clarification as well, because this is where, the whole air quote BC Bud, this is the origin of where BC Bud entered the global stage of cannabis. It was because of the cultivation going on out there. And so much so that, the draw for even in Amsterdam, you want a BC Bud, chances are you're paying like $800 an ounce for that, right? So Kootenay's Finest, living soils, true to the craft, and friends with Kyp. So I can imagine we can probably pull some stories out there that the audience would love.
Yeah, we had some Kyp stories from the Bubble Man a couple episodes
Oh yeah,
ago. And,
I didn't realize how ingrained and entrenched this guy is into this industry.
well, he's so likable. It's like
Oh,
so
yeah,
likable and
okay.
knowledgeable. It's easy. I can
Yeah.
So.
But there's got to be some stories. So we'll find that out. Looking forward to that. We're going to have Kevin join us after the break. Anything else we want to cover?
I don't think so right now. We can
Feeling good?
take a much needed maybe a lunch break. I don't know. We'll see.
Tinkle. I got a tinkle. All right.
Wipe the sweat off your brow. It's so hot in the studio.
It's one thing about wearing a hat, at least it absorbs it. I'm not so bad right now. But anyways, we'll be back after the break with Kevin McBride. Looking forward to that. Hey everyone, if you're like me, you get overwhelmed by the product selection in this crazy cannabis market. Every 2 weeks, we drop a digital flyer with a curated list or featured products that you'll want to try. Subscribe to our digital flyer at thehighflyer.ca, and you can also check out our historical flyers to see the products that we featured with a selection that I approve of, and Wes certainly does. Check it out at thehighflyer.ca. All right, welcome back everyone. We're joined by Kevin McBride of, if you can't tell, Kootenay's finest craft cannabis. Kevin, thanks for joining Legacies, man.
My pleasure.
It's great to have you. I joked when you first joined the call. I'm like, it looked like Wes. It's so your shirt is so bright. It's awesome. But I thought he was superimposing something for a moment. So love it.
I got to represent. Coots.
I'll say. Yeah. And during my research, I didn't realize the history of the Kootenay region when it comes to BC bud.
Yeah, we're the originator.
The OGs.
I consider the Kootenays kind of like Humboldt County of Canada, you know?
Yeah, no doubt. That's what I was reading, and we're going to get into all the great products that you have available, where they're available. But we want to know the history and the story, man. So going back, you'll recall we had Mr. Kyp Rowe on, who is a legend in of his own. But you used to chum with him, and probably still do.
Oh yeah, old growers. We did a few shows, some fish shows. So.
Yeah, no doubt.
Shenanigans.
Yeah. Legends in the industry. Obviously, probably wouldn't be where we are without the way that you've paved for many of us. But let's go way back, because I want to understand something. There was something that I read about the Kootenay region. And back in the 70s, it was, an area where, excuse me, that draft dodgers would make their way to, and then eventually start growing cannabis. One, were you a draft dodger? No. But I'm trying to understand, help us understand the historical value of the Kootenay region and what that means to BC bud.
Yeah, back in the day, in the late 60s, early 70s, the Vietnam War was going on. So a lot of draft dodgers, especially, California hippies, were getting out of America and getting back to the land. And, one of my best girlfriends, her dad was in the Berkeley riots, and he was wanted by the FBI. So he just headed, where can you hide out as best as you can? So kind of like, we're just a bit west of the Rocky Mountains, but the Kootenay Mountains are, perfect for growing cannabis up in the hills. The land was cheap back then. Not that there was communes or things like that, but family farms with lots of families sharing on, 50 acres, 100-acre farms.
Mm-hmm.
And they were bringing up their, California strains, and then as well, you'd hear stories about, these hippie guys who would be going to India, kind of like the Beatles, and then bringing over Hindu Kush strains from India. So you're crossing these California strains with these Indian Kush strains, and, some of the originating, BC bud, really, if you think about it. And, well, I'm kind of second generation of that. Then we've got the third generation, like my son, he was working here at the farm, and just the lineage of the legacy market up here it's been here for, a long time.
Yeah.
Early 80s, right?
Wow.
And even the, one of the towns wanted to put up a statue for the draft dodgers, and the Washington State Tourism Board said, if you guys do that, we're going to boycott.
What?
We can't celebrate the draft dodgers and these old hippies, man. It's like, Okay, whatever.
Yeah, depends which culture you want to add them into because we
Yeah,
do.
of course. And we do, man. We show much respect to those elders, man. They paved the way and,
No doubt.
now look where we're at, so it's pretty crazy.
Wow. So you said, you're second gen, moving into third gen now with your offspring, but what was that like for you? Like what impressionable years, age was it that, you know, you were experiencing this? And then I also want to know, like, what was your first experience with either an OG cultivar coming up from Cali or one of these hybrid mixes where, they'd bring back some Hindu Kush and mixed it in. So
Yeah,
help us
I mean,
understand that.
yeah, totally. Like even like as young as, 17, 16, 17, I had an old uncle who I was growing up in Vancouver and then, but, I had a crazy old hippie uncle living up here in the hills, growing cannabis up in the mountains. And then I'd come up in the spring, young buck and haul it dirt up the mountain. And
Yeah.
then while, trimming wheat, trimming outdoor,
Trimmigrants.
trimming, yeah, or just the young bucks who could carry big packs of dirt on their
Yeah.
backs.
Yeah.
And so we'd make a couple bucks in the late summer, early fall, and then go back to the city, and then in the fall I'd come up, help trim that and then bring it to the city and sell to all the
Yeah.
pure Vancouver, right? The OG outdoor, crosses, some old school cushes, you know, some of the Mighty Might, some of the Tuxedo Timor, things like that.
Wow.
They were
Wow.
crossed up here, and then the big ones like White Grizzly, which were just, monsters, 10, 12 feet tall kind of
Jeez.
plants. Just,
What
we,
what cultivar or strain put BC bud on the map? Can it be defined into one specific strain?
oh, that is a good question. I've never really thought about that. Gosh, it's got to be some kind of, Kush, some skunk, some kind of old school skunk,
Yeah, yeah.
ruderalis, maybe kind of cross. I think like an indoor outdoor kind of cross.
Right, right, right.
That's
It'd be interesting to trace that back. We'll continue to ask this question
oh,
and see if
I
how
mean,
far
when
back
we were
we can go. Because
teenagers, man, we bought the stuff like the first real chronic indoor I saw was called Ultra Bud. I was like, what is Ultra Bud? And
yeah,
it was a skunk cross. It was,
okay,
it was an OG skunk cross, right? But
yeah,
it
yeah.
was like,
And
whoa,
then the skunk over time was bred so that it would get rid of that distinctive smell because it was a heat score. Like no one could grow it because you could smell it for blocks away. And
oh,
in the
yeah,
80s, you didn't have these, 1 million micron filtration systems that were clearing the air for you. It
yeah,
was holy shit, someone is definitely growing
yeah.
cannabis.
Harvest used to be stinking up the block and ran. It was just like,
Yeah, for sure. Especially if you had any sort of a trim machine, right? I think of those, Trim Pro XLs and they're just beating the shit out of the buds because you had to get through it. Like
yeah,
sitting and hand trimming, my God, 10, 15, 20 acres of weed, like that's going to take forever.
yeah, we're a big crew, man. I've seen some big outdoor crews, 10
Yeah.
people just going at it, right? The trimming.
Wow. For days too, right? Just carpal
Oh,
tunnel
days.
and
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
so there was, I mentioned to Wes earlier as we were priming up for having you on, but that region in particular was very targeted when it came to RCMP and the police. Like they'd come in and rappel out of helicopters and chop the. I mean, we've seen it. I've experienced it in Ontario where they're coming in and they're doing their flybys, especially in the fall because it's easier to see.
Yeah.
Were you witness to any of that happening? Because that's kind of where everyone would, like the RCMP would target the Kootenay region.
Yeah. I mean, literally they had their own division called the Green Team, and you'd hear through the grapevine, oh, damn, the Green Team's parking, going through that town. They're coming west. Oh, damn.
Yeah.
Everybody. And then, I mean, I got PTSD from if I hear a helicopter,
Yeah,
I
for
still
sure.
have PTSD. I'm like, geez,
Yeah.
I've literally been hiding under a log and a chopper like 20 feet over my head. It's just kind of
Oh
like,
my God.
it's just kind of, it felt like a war zone. Like you're just like,
Yeah.
and roadblocks, you'd hear, oh, roadblock down the highway, stop, sticking their head in your car. Oh, what's going on with you guys? And You know,
Yeah.
you have
Oh,
these
nothing.
head
Pay,
sticker on your
yeah.
cars. Oh no, boys, you know.
Pay no attention to all the bales we have in the back. It's
Yeah.
fine. Yeah.
Or the hockey bags full of
Yeah,
fresh,
no doubt.
freshly.
Oh man, it's giving me anxiety thinking about it because I joke and I say to Wes every once in a while, like, I'll hear a car door late at night, like just slam, and I'm like, oh my God, who's that? Who's outside? What's going on? Right. And I'm like, okay,
Yes.
hold on. Everything's legal. What am I doing? But you're
Yeah.
programmed to be hyper aware of the sounds and surroundings of what's going on because and the thing that, I think about that and I think about even, the thieves in this day and age that come out just to steal crop, right? They know there's something, swamps are big for it, plant on the edge of a swamp or something like that. But
Yeah.
it's almost like a big fuck you that the green team would have to the growers and the producers because they'd come right at like you're getting close to harvest. And now they come in and they take it all down. They'll bleach it, they'll, you know, burn it, do whatever they need to do to take it down, right?
Oh, and they made more of a mess than the growers. You go, they chop it all down, put it in a giant pile. They'd stand around, burn it, bleach it. They're eating their candy bars, they're drinking their pops. They're just throwing the garbage on the ground
Oh,
and pouring whatever chemicals on the product, on the crop, and yeah, and then high fiving each other and just
yeah,
just
yeah,
like
yeah.
that's
Yeah.
so
I have a buddy that's in law enforcement that has a picture from I think it's the early 90s standing in front of a huge pile of weed being burned. And he's a consumer now. And I'm
yeah.
like, every time I'm like, you remember this, motherfucker?
Oh
Do you remember this? And
yeah.
and it's so that stigma, it's unfortunate because the stigma was there, obviously. There's still a stigma, right? We still fight the stigma day in, day out. It's obviously changing and regulations and everything is helped us. But there's still a stigma.
Oh man, I mean, there's a local store that still sells this old postcard, and it's a picture of a RCMP pickup truck full to the brim with outdoor, just and it's just like, welcome to the Kootenays,
Yeah. But so we'll determine which strain put BC on the map at some point in time. We're gonna have to pull a meeting of the minds, I think, and
Yeah.
understand what's going on. We'll pull in Bubble Man, we'll pull in Kyp, we'll pull everyone in that we need to. But for the time being, I want to understand because BC Bud became like it hit the worldwide stage. And it was available Amsterdam, in Australia. It was available wherever you could smuggle it to. They wanted it. But it commanded a very high price point.
Oh yeah, I mean, I remember when I was in Jamaica, way back and just on a vacation, and I'm sitting on the beach, and this little kid comes up, and he's trying to sell me some Jamaican weed, and he's got a T-shirt. It says BC Bud, and it's got a picture of a bud, and it just says BC Bud. I'm like, "Where'd you get that shirt, man?" And he's like, "Oh man, somebody give this to me," And I'm like, "This little kid in Jamaica selling, some Jamaican and whatever, right?" And I'm like, "Oh, I guess we made it, right? It's all over the, just like
Wow.
talking about BC Bud in Jamaica."
Yeah, and do you still see because I know Kootenay's Finest, like you guys are working on global expansion. You want to be able to export to certain markets and share the great craft that you have, which is going to beg another question that I have for you. But what has that process been like? Because I know that everyone wants to try and export, right? We want to share. We want to share with the rest of
Yeah.
the world, and obviously there's certain financial aspects of that make sense, especially in a very competitive market in Canada. What is Kootenay doing when it comes to positioning your products on the world stage right now?
Well, we've been in Australia for about a year.
Hmm.
We work with a group called Phytoka, some great, guys, and they're kind of friends of the family. So our master grower is from the UK, Sal Cooley, uh, mad genius, crazy geneticist. Been my partner for 6 years and my good friend for 30.
Hmm.
He met a Kootenai girl in India and then moved to the Kootenays about 20 years ago, raised a family, all that. But he came up in the UK and Holland and in India with with the Dutch crew and Shati Baba, Greenhouse Seeds, Strain
Oh yeah,
Outers, that
yeah.
kind of crew.
Hmm.
So, and then I come out of the, California, the West Coast, Grateful Dead scene, and then we kind of merged the two up in the Kootenays here. So, um, one of our partners one of his best friends, one of our good bros is Australian.
Okay.
And then we actually work with Shanti Baba's nephew, Mitch. And so, that's where we kind of go with the Australian thing. So,
Got it.
and then well received in Australia, like people love craft. They appreciate, they've been buying, dirt weed for years and even, no diss to Canadian LPs, but I mean, even Canadians have been, this international thing, it's getting better, but I mean, in the last few years, there's been, it's a dumping ground. Australians
Right.
don't know
Yeah.
no good weed.
Yeah.
Send
Send them your criminals if you remember those days, right?
send them criminals in your dirt weed. And I mean, it's kind of like Israel. I remember, I mean, just a couple months ago, the Israeli government said, stop sending your fucking dirt weed over to us.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So, so people appreciate quality,
Mhm.
organic, grow all living soil organics. So in Australia, it's a real medical, it is a medical market. There is no
Right.
craft. So doctors are pretty psyched to offer a living soil organic product, right? So
Mhm.
that's kind of been our niche. And we've been running 2 cultivars over there for about a year, and it seems like, send more. So,
Yeah. Yeah. That's
but we're
awesome.
small batch, right? We're just a
Yeah.
micro. We're not, we're not a big standard LP. We're a micro. We have 2,100 square feet of canopy. We're not,
Mhm.
pumping out thousands of kilos or anything like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. Well, and
But
that
people
was
appreciate they want fresh, small batch.
sure. Yeah. Yeah. Well, and that's the question. I mean, we've been asking this quite a bit lately, especially like we had Alana Davis on, and smallish, but she can keep to herself when it comes to, how much they produce. But, we've asked the question, like, everyone wants to expand across Canada and, for whatever reason, they want to be in Ontario, even though it has kind of the most gates to get into. But if you're able to keep up with your demand based on what you have as a footprint, does it make sense to go any further? And obviously you want to share and have an air quote global brand, but if you're sending out, I'm being selfish, maybe thinking if you're sending some of this product overseas, that's less for me, man. Like,
Well, I mean, we want to keep our footprint in Canada too. We've got, we're working with another company I helped start. I'm one of the co-founders of Mansfield Processing, which is
right.
a local processing company in Nelson that's been up and running for about a year now.
Hmm.
We started Antidote to help Kootenay farmers get to market. So
Oh,
through Antidote, Kootenay's Finest has about 4 SKUs in BC right now. We've got 3 of our cultivars in 3.5 gram offerings, and then a pre-roll offering. And then we work with other LPs across Canada. As we worked with East Can the last 2 years.
mhm.
Our Zirpal Sunset was in Ontario. Got our multi-business and our Zirpal Punch in the Maritimes. So we're trying to, you know, keep the brand alive, keep the word out, spread
Yeah.
the Kootenay love, across the country and internationally. Yeah.
Yeah. How does so this creates, just as you're saying this, it dawned on me that because even being in the industry and understanding as many brands as we have either talked to or worked with or whatever it might be, how do you educate the consumer, today's consumer, those that we'll say were fringe and are now in the industry, they're, regular consumers. How does Kootenay and other small craft batch micros, living soil, like true to the craft, properly cured cannabis, how do you communicate that message to consumers now? Like, are you relying more on those that know? Because like, I'm thinking retail locations, I'm thinking what's going on. Maybe there's a poster, maybe there's not. They can only put so many up, but how does Kootenay as a brand communicate to the end consumer? This is small batch craft, living soil, premium cannabis. Because when I see, a lineup of pre-roll tubes in a
Yeah.
shelf, or like, first of all, I can't read them, right? That's number one.
Yeah.
And usually I'm going in on a hunt because it's either a brand we've worked with or someone I'm trying to support, like Kootenay. And I'm like, I can't even read the logos. The requirements are that has to be so small. But How do you communicate that? How do you differentiate yourself?
Yeah, it's hard. I mean, look, you think about, you walk into a store these days and there's 300 choices, right?
Yeah.
Um, I find that, we try and engage the bud tenders.
Hmm.
We've had a couple of bud tender appreciation events that we participate in. We love to give away samples to bud tenders. You know,
Hmm.
you, they're younger people, um, not making the biggest wage. So, I just was in Vancouver a month ago and I hit every store, try and give everybody a nug to meet the bud tenders, some pre rolls, just and educate them, and
Hmm.
and educating the store owners and engaging with the store owners, and trying to get our story out there to the gatekeepers, really,
Yeah.
and then if a customer comes in, ask the bud tender, hey, do you have any organics? Oh yeah, we got some Kootenay organic living soil right
Hmm.
here. Um, and I keep trying to, I'm trying to push, try and emphasize to these guys too, is push BC and BC. We should be,
Hmm.
you know, really, buy BC,
Sure.
bud in BC, these stores, and no diss to Ontario or wherever these other LPs are from. But I mean, this is what I really try and push that message across too.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Kevin,
Well, I
real,
mean,
real,
go
real
ahead.
quick there. Sorry, when you're talking about going and visiting these dispensaries and visiting the bud tenders and getting the word out, Tom and I've said this before too, where sometimes bud tenders can be, it's whatever shirt's not in the laundry that day, right? That's the brand that they're kind of representing. Do you find that you have to, does that love for Kootenay after you've gone out and done those visits taper off fairly quickly and you've got to go back out and do that stuff again? Is it repeating for you, or do you feel like that kind of message sticks that first time, or what's that experience like?
Yeah, I mean, we're just trying to. I mean, I'm always trying to keep the engagement, and Antidote does a good job of trying to engage the stores and represent the Kootenay brands. With their marketing team, we've been working with Green Hedge as well. Antidote's been working with Green Hedge for the last 6 months, so their team is out pounding the pavement as well, giving out samples. There's been a few like the tether events, which are bud tender events.
Hmm.
Um, these sampling events would just have kind of started in the last few months. I find it really great. We've had really great engagement. We're just giving out nugs to bud tenders. And I mean, I find if they like the product, then it's not about if someone gave them a free hoodie.
Right.
They go, yeah, I smoke this. I like this.
Hmm.
Um, and there are, you know, it's funny. I'm always like, trying to push the organics in the living soil, but there are people who I just wanted the highest THC and
Yeah.
the most chronic. Cool. But there are
Yeah.
people who are looking for organics. And so the bud tender can go, yeah, you want organics? Here we go.
Hmm.
Guys like Sweetgrass and Cultivar and us who
Yeah.
we really push the living soil and the organics. And, we
Let's.
try and tell a story too with our organics. We buy our organic amendments from, we're buying sea soil and seaweed from Vancouver Island and worm castings from the farm down the road. And, it's almost farm to table. We're trying to, 100-mile diet, all these things, we're trying to support, we're a small farm. We try to support other small farmers,
Right.
and
That makes a lot of sense.
yeah, so we're trying,
So
it's all about telling the story and, on the socials too, and just
yeah,
keep telling that and, and being somewhere like this. And you guys, appreciate you guys getting the word out on your story.
we thank you. Help us. I think when we had first met, I did ask the question about the living soil organic, because I remember the early days. Purcell and I, David Purcell, I know you're
Yeah.
acquainted with. We went down this. I think I was in BC at the time, and we were talking to Travis and some of the local growers, and they had just some fire genetics, and their products were incredible. But they grew living soil organic, and at that time, it was 2017 into 18 in the transition period. Health Canada was not a fan of living soils; like they just were not really allowing it at all. So, help us understand, what does that mean, right? Because you dropped a couple little like worm castings and seaweed, and right, but what does living soil and organic mean in this context?
Yeah. So we don't use any chemical fertilizers. So all our fertilizers per se are naturally or organically certified or already listed. So it's kind of like
Mhm.
eating organic strawberries from, Whole Foods or something.
Right.
You know that we haven't sprayed any pesticides. We haven't added any chemical fertilizers. We haven't sprayed any fungicides. Um, our dirt literally we've been using the same dirt for 3 years. We constantly add new microbials. So this living soil is alive with
Mhm.
micronutrients. But the thing about Health Canada is they want everything sterile, pharmaceutical.
Yeah. Yeah.
You can't have any non-porous material in your growing facility. So like everything is stainless steel and
Right.
vinyl
The
siding,
walls are
well,
mylar and
gloves
yeah.
and lab coats.
Yeah.
So this is what freaked Health Canada. You have living soil. There's microbials and,
Yeah.
and microbiotics, and this is going to get in the weed, and it's going to, you know,
Yeah.
or,
Good. That's what we want.
yeah, exactly. And I mean, I understand you don't want moldy buds. You don't want
Of course. Of course.
molds and mildews and um, funguses in your flour.
Yeah.
So I mean, we go through the same testing. Every batch is tested for microbials, fungicide, heavy metals, all that
Mhm.
stuff. So we pass all those tests for flying coat. So
Well, I was going to ask, sorry, I want to ask about that. So in typical case, you would see there are allowable pesticides and, various treatments that you can put on the plants, whether in vegetative or in flowering state. But is it easier to pass those tests then when you are living soil organic, or is it harder? Or is it just completely, we're dealing with, completely different situations here?
uh, I think it's relative. I mean, we keep us. Our scene is really clean,
For
um,
sure. Yeah.
and so we've never failed the test. We've never, so I couldn't speak to how a guy who grows in Rockwell.
Hmm.
Um, it's I find with molds and mildews, it's your cure. Really,
Right.
and we do a slow 14-day cold cure and then another 2-week burp, and so we're really mindful of you know molds and mildews in your buds. Like, I
Yeah.
mean, you see somebody. I mean, unfortunately, it's some guys who grow those monster buds. You're going to have bud rot. It's
Right.
it's not. It's hard not to.
Hmm.
So these guys from in these and so we avoid that too with just in our crew. So we've seen that in other people. So we'll do instead of one giant lollipop, we'll do 5 nice nugs.
Right. Right.
And
You always wanted to shoot for that huge cola, and it's like, guys, you have no idea what's going on in there.
yeah, you open it up later, like, oh damn.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
for
and
sure.
what happens? Then it's somebody's buying something later down the road, and gonna see it on Reddit. Picture of your
Yeah.
bud.
Yes.
Rotten flavors.
Reddit. Yeah. That's not where you want to end up, because usually it's for the wrong reasons, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. So, and then, so as you obviously saw a need, with Antidote, helping these local producers. Has that been a challenge at all? Because you've got Kootenay's Finest and then Antidote. Is that,
Well, Antidote, like I helped start it, and
okay.
there was 4 founders.
Hmm.
Myself, Shannon Ross is our esteemed leader.
Hmm.
She came out of Community Futures, but she's an old cannabis grower. But she was involved with Community Futures in a program called the Cannabis Business Transition Initiative, which was the first of its kind in Canada. And it was the Community Futures, which helps small communities, rural communities with low interest loans,
Hmm.
um, help you get licensed. So she was leading that way, and they helped us actually 3 years ago, low interest loan to
Hmm.
get started. And then, so she saw the need to take it to the next level when
Okay.
that program ended. So now that everyone's licensed, so right at the moment, we've got about 7 Kootenay farms under this Antidote banner. And then Antidote is a different facility, about 2 hours away from where I'm at. But we bring our flower there when we've harvested. So there's packaging there in different formats, 3.5 grams, 14 gram,
Mhm.
28 gram bags. We do tree rolls there. The hash lab's up and running. And with live rosin from outdoor farmers, we've got a reefer can, and
Oh.
then resin from the hash tech, the hash machines.
Mhm.
And so just bringing different products to the market, and then their team will get the SKUs listed, help with marketing,
Got it.
stuff
Okay.
that we can just focus on farming, like the
Yeah,
farmers,
yeah.
and let those guys
What a
process
concept.
it.
Such a concept, right? Like, let the
No,
farmers farm, for crying out loud. There's so many
God.
other things that need to go on, but
Oh, dude. I mean, like my bros at Sweetgrass, they do everything themselves, right? Which
Mhm.
my hats off to them. These guys are
They don't
packaging.
sleep. There's no way they
Yeah.
can
Oh,
sleep.
they've got a huge team. That's not us. But, we work with Antidote, or we'll work with another processor or another LP where they buy bulk from us.
Right, right, right.
So
Okay, that makes
that's the
sense.
point is we just focus on growing and let other people handle the other sets.
Yeah, well, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And good for you for making sure that that's available, because I know that that's part of the struggle, right? Is you have these incredible growers. We've seen a bunch of other ones come online, especially certain ones in BC, Ontario. I think some of the OG growers are still hiding underground. Some of them don't want to come out for a certain reason, and I
Yeah.
can respect that. Unfortunately, I operate in the regulated market now, and this is where I hang my hat. So it's nice to see that. So, what would you say, at what point did you say, you know what, we just need to make a go, and we're going to go into the regulated market. We're going to get set up because, BC, I don't think BC, we'll call it illicit, legacy, whatever we want to say, right? The bud still commanded a decent price, even in the Canadian stage, right? Where Ontario, some of the Maritimes, and other areas throughout the prairies, the decline as legalization was forming up, you're going from 2,400 a P down to 16, and all of a sudden it's bottoming at like 9.
Yeah.
It didn't make a lot of sense for these growers, but in BC, you were still getting decent amounts for, the product produced. But what was that moment? I don't want to say eureka, because maybe you were forced into it, so I don't know. But at
No,
what
no.
point did you say, you know what, like, let's make a go of this. Let's share this product legally with as many as we can.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I was a legacy grower, indoor, outdoor. I was getting a little tired of looking over my shoulder. I mean, I
Yeah.
grew up in Vancouver, but, worked in the film industry for 15 years, but
Mm.
always loved cannabis, always had a few lights in the basement and crazy old hippie uncle, that
Yeah,
kind of.
yeah.
So, I wanted to get out of Vancouver and be more involved in the cannabis industry. And I was always growing organically, and then did a bit of consulting work before I started this work with a couple LPs in BC and in America on growing. I helped set up a few MMAR shows, ACMPR
Mhm.
shows. Just been doing it since I was a teenager. So just trying to bring my knowledge to other
Yeah.
people, and then, dealing with, stockbrokers from Toronto or Boston and New York, who just like, these guys don't have a clue about cannabis.
Yeah.
And me and Sal were like, we got to do this ourselves.
Yeah.
We can't consult for these guys and they don't even listen to half the stuff you tell. You guys want to be organic? Oh, we don't. Yeah, but that's,
No, we just want weed that sells for a lot of money. Give us lots of
exactly.
it.
We want to, give us the cheapest growing program, we can give you. Okay. So, we got a business plan together and pounded the pavement, raised the capital, and took 2 years to build our building, and then we've been licensed for 3, and so it's been a journey. But yeah, I just was like, these guys don't know what they're doing, so we got to jump in
Yeah.
here. You're right, and we
Yeah.
want to represent the Kootenays, and we also provide a lot of jobs. We live in a little town. Our little town's called
Right.
Crawford Bay.
Mhm.
There's a store, there's a golf course, there's, a couple of Larzans, but today we've got like, 15 people working here. We've got
Wow.
truckers and, production staff. And we're one of
Yeah.
the biggest employers over in Little Town. So,
Wow. But you got a golf course.
we got a golf course. Why not?
We will. Believe me, we will. And it's funny because you're talking about the MMAR, those shows and getting them set up, which is where I cut my teeth. And, in those days, I had my personal friend was a consultant, right? So not for everyone else, but he would do the doctor visits and go around to these various MMARs and ACMPRs and understand what's working, not working. We always thought we knew what we were doing. And the biggest advice I think I got, and he was a close friend, I don't know, it was, midnight and I'm sending him pictures and I'm like, should I be doing this and be doing this? He's like, where the fuck are you getting this information from? He goes, I told you to stay off of Google. Just listen to what I'm doing, right? Because I'm bringing in these weird theories and opportunities. And he's like, just shut up. Just stop doing that. So first harvest, super successful. Like, I mean, super successful. He was very in tune with what was going on. Yeah. The second one, he kind of just kicked the little bird out of the nest, right? And it was a fucking colossal failure. I was down to like a pound per light or something like that. And it was just brutal and no one wanted it. I think I ended up, making bubble hash out of it using Marcus's bags of all things, right? But yeah, I could just imagine having those early day conversations. Wes and I were in the tech side, we were doing compliance for cannabis. So we weren't having those investor conversations, but we had a lot of friends that were at the time, and they're like, clueless. These guys are clueless. Like, they have no idea. They think it's going to cost, we could sell them anything. You could sell them, it's going to be a $25 million facility by the time we're done. It's only going to cost $5 million. Like, it's craziness in those days.
Oh, I know, man. And then, before the green rush, just right before legalization, these guys wanted to buy everything up,
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I helped start Puff Pipes back in the day. And then, these guys are all sniffing around to buy puff from us, right? It's just like,
right.
They just want to buy everything, anything to do with cannabis.
Anything to do with it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And now they're trying everything they can to get rid of it and unload these things.
Are they
albatrosses
2 years ago?
Yeah. What are some of the, we want to make sure that, I already know Kyp will tune in, but I want to understand some crazy stories from your days hanging and chilling with Kyp.
Well, we were, just good old Kitsilano, Vancouver boys, right? And,
yeah. Did you have any ads out in High Times magazine? Like,
yeah, exactly.
I had no idea that was him. That just blew me away. I'm like, that was you?
Yeah, exactly, man. And it's funny, because I was in with Puff Pipes, which is a legal, company, and we expanded to California, and we, but we're still just on the fringe of the, the illegal side, and then, growing in the basement in East Van as well, or outdoor, swinging outdoor or whatever, right? So it was there, it was a small scene in Vancouver, and, so there was, one grow store back in the day, John's and already you hear stories, you better not park in front, which the RCMP were literally sitting across the road in the park, filming people coming in and going.
Oh yeah. Yeah. It was the easiest traffic they could. I got this in London, Ontario. I got it all the time. I was always being filmed, always.
Yeah. So, that kind of thing. So you're just like, wow, this is, so it was a small, cannabis scene in Vancouver, in those days. We all knew each other, and we were all, and actually Kyp had a store, and then Puff took over the store. So we were involved in that. He was doing retail with some of his bros, and probably seeds out the back door, and, whichever, that kind of, so it was all
For
that.
sure. Yeah.
Just running around.
Has there ever been any, I mean, because we always liken it to, California extends into BC. It's always West Coast, and that's where the best genetics are. That's where the best products are. Has there ever been any animosity between BC and Cali, or is it kind of a community of, no, we know we grow some of the best weed in the world? Or is it, no, we see what you're doing up there, BC. It's never going to compare to Cali, and vice versa. Has that ever been a thing?
Yeah, definitely, man. Cali boys are pretty Proud Bunch, right?
Yeah.
And then the BC boys would be coming down, and it'd be funny, you try and sell some BC bud down there. I don't know if, you get your Ziploc
Yeah.
and it says French, right? Contents, Conto.
Oh, okay.
And
Yeah.
it's try and sell that as California weed, right? And you're like, hey, I got some Cali bud. And they're like, really? What's this French?
Yeah. Yeah.
This is BC. So they'd be like, here,
But you'd
guy.
be trying to, don't you peddle that shit down here?
Well, it's market, saturation
Yeah.
or bringing prices down, like, and I mean, they had it way harder than we did, of course, right? Talking about chocolate and,
Oh, yeah.
and roadblocks and
Yeah. Thanks, Reagan.
that shit, right? So for them, they demanded, the prices were insane back then.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Well,
they,
and there was part of that though,
yeah,
part of that just being, black market and you've got the feds very hard on it. Reagan administration even harder on it. The war on drugs. Today I declare a war on drugs, right? So all of that presence and what it took to be able to continue to maintain this underworld presence, even though everyone knew what was going on in Cali back in those days, right?
oh, for sure.
But that's what drove certain prices. I mean, there's more cost involved in producing it at the end of the day.
More risk, more reward, right? That's what, I mean, the humble guys, there's the, Mexican cartel, the Russian cartel, this is
Jeez.
the life that they're dealing with, right?
Yeah.
And, guys with armed guards, at the end of your road, like a gate, you're not allowed in this neighborhood. Who the fuck are you? Right? That kind of.
Yeah. And I mean, there's lots of documentaries out there where you can watch some of, especially about the Emerald Triangle. But we've seen there's some coming from BC, and I don't know if they've sat on footage. I don't, and they're like, oh, we'll wait until one day it's legal, and now they're starting to, drip it out and make it available. There's something though that I had read, and I especially relate to this. You said, you're not producing for the Budweiser drinkers, right? And
Yeah.
I don't know if it was you or Sal that I had read that quote from, but I say the same thing, which is there's a lot of various mix of products available in the market. And, be that pre-rolls, infused pre-rolls or flour, and then you get into what is the quality of the actual product itself. And I say there's no frills all the way up to your farm boys. And depending on which shopper you are, you're going to find a certain product within that fit. Where does Kootenay, and I think I know the answer, but where does Kootenay's Finest fall within that?
Yeah, I mean, we try to be a premium product. I mean, we hand tend everything, and and so our costs are a little higher, right?
Yeah.
Living soil organic amendments and things like that are more expensive. I mean, we could go hand dripper Rockwell cubes with salt, water soluble salts. I mean, we do like 3 prunes. We, hand trim everything. We hand tend everything. We hand water everything. I mean, we're hand watering in organic teas. We're, we feel we're as craft as we can be. And so, yeah, there's craft organic ale that you could from a microbrewery, or there is Budweiser, and we feel we want to be like a craft brewery and offer an organic premium product. And it might cost more, but I mean, we feel it's worth it, and we try and stand apart from, and make sure every bud is beautiful. And you're not going to open up your 3.5 gram and it's full of little schnarbs or, shake and,
Yeah. Well, I think that's the difference is, for those that may consume every day, maybe it's not an everyday thing. It could be a treat, but for those that maybe consume every once in a while, it makes sense. And then, the craft, we saw this in the craft beer market, right? As the rise of craft beer started to gain and maintain market dominance. I mean, there's a lot that can be said about the craft beer industry. And I think that's the difference that we see is because there was this existence culture around cannabis already, and people understood ditchweed versus premium organic weed, that out of the gate, there's a lot of arms around craft cannabis and truly craft and premium product.
Yeah, and I mean, I get it, man. Like, times are tight, and people, their expendable income is smaller and smaller all the time. But I mean, I still, I drink Nelson Organic Craft Ale. That's my beer of choice. I
Yeah.
don't want to smoke swag. And if I, if I buy something from whatever LP and I open it up and it's just a bunch of little dirt lugs up around, it was like, what the heck is this?
Yeah. Do you, we always joke about this, which is, you can get burned on a bag, but half the time you can't fucking do anything about it. I mean, you can reach out to the producer or the brand through social sometimes. Chances are it's going to get crickets as a response. We're not the types to ever go to Reddit. And then you've got, hey, you could take it back to the dispensary, but in a lot of cases they're going to go, yeah, sorry about your luck. Like,
Yeah, Angelo's got a good relationship with most of the dispensaries. So like we've had like someone complain about something and Angelo will say, oh, sorry, but like, oh, this 3.5 gram bag was 3.25. It was short too, maybe you tried a bit or something. Oh, well,
sure.
we'll send you 8. Here you go, send it to the
Yeah.
dispensary. And the dispensary will, most dispensaries are pretty good on that front, whether they go, oh, if there's a problem. And then they'll
Yeah.
contact the processor itself and then make
Right, right. Yeah, but I don't think you see it a lot though, especially with your products that are going out. What do you feel is the future for Kootenays? Are you just going to keep doing what you're doing, do it really well, or are there plans for expansion?
No expansion plans right in the near future. I mean, we looked at it last year because it was, we were selling a lot, and just to build these days, it's insane, right?
Yeah.
To build a building, we're a 5,000 square foot facility here. HVAC, air conditioning, dehumidification. You're looking at $2 million, $3 million. To build another facility, just in the price of building. So, we're pretty happy where we're at right now, but we just want to continue to bring new flavors to the market. And I mean, we've been approached by, word's getting out about BC and cookies and organics. So we've been approached by German companies, Israeli companies, more Australians, or more across Canada, right? We want Antidote's going to be in Alberta and the prairies, in Ontario. There's SKUs in Ontario, Maritimes. So we just kind of want to spread, and we got 3 new cultivars coming probably in the next 2 months. So that's kind of exciting. And Sal, our master grower, he's got 200 strains that he's bred, and he's constantly breeding, most of the time. I'm also the QA here at our facility. So I'm preparing all these lab testing, and I'm just like, dude, slow down. It was like lab.
Yeah.
What we're doing,
these cost money. Yeah, these are shit tickets. Come on, this is expensive.
It's amazing, man, what he does. He's really, it's his passion, and we love that about it.
Yeah.
And just searching out, different terpenes and expanding on, trying to get more of a farnesene terpene out of something or something like that. And just crossing, and it's funny, in Australia, they kind of wanted hey, we want a nighttime strain and we want a daytime strain, so, a lot of our stuff is hybrid, 50-50, 70-30, indica sativas. So, if we breed something with more sativa in it for a daytime, get things done kind of use, and then, and then, your heavy indica couch lock for nighttime. And also this is better for sleep or better for anxiety or better for, so Sal's really, we're all in, that's kind of what we try and focus on and do a lot of testing, and all our staff were there and heavy into smoking. We, we want to make sure that, what's the feel on that? Why about that?
That's cool. That's cool. You brought up a point that I think would be very interesting, and I think we're seeing it. So we've seen there's a lot of brands that source their flower and they exist as a brand, and there's nothing wrong with that. And some of them, source from incredible producers. Is there an opportunity where, you're talking about approached by Germany or Germans and Australians, et cetera, and even throughout Canada, where, you as a company can come in now and consult on we can bring Kootenay to your facility, basically, which is do this, we bring in the genetics, we'll give you the, the recipes, the light recipes, the nutrient, like everything you need to do. And then you're almost putting your stamp of Kootenay on it, even though it's not produced in Kootenay. Is that a model that is worth pursuing or that you are pursuing?
I mean, we've been approached, but I mean, again, you're giving away all your IP, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So, in South.
Yeah, because you can sign NDAs till you're blue in the face, but it doesn't
Yeah.
mean that someone there, you've got young Johnny, the trimmer, right? And he's like, oh, I like what they're doing. And he's going around and taking note. And, all of a sudden.
And we have sold some genetics. We've got a seed library here. And I bred like 50,000 Kootenay outdoor seeds, or like 200,000 seeds.
Jeez.
I've sold to other outdoor LPs. They'll buy them 1 year, and then the next year they're like, I'm like, do you need more seed? Oh no, we made moms out of your seed. So
yeah. Well, as a matter of fact, we're the Monsanto in the industry, and you have to give us those back.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, the Terminator seed. Yeah.
Yeah, no doubt.
So, there's that, there's always that vibe, right? When you're doing out genetics, you got to, sometimes you sell clones, or you're going to sell seeds. You just got to, the fact that they might be buying those 6 months or next year.
Yeah, for sure. I remember when Charlotte's Web was a big thing, still is, obviously, and Rick Simpson and all the work that he's done. But bringing in a tray of clones from the US, I mean, that was expensive when Charlotte's Web became popular.
Oh yeah.
And then all of a sudden, like anything, right? Well, a couple cuttings here, a couple cuttings there, a little rooting gel, and now I've got a mom, right? So I could see that, which is also why it's wise to continue to, refresh and cycle through your genetics that you have. So right now, help us understand what's available, but then let's not confuse our audience too much, because you've got some new flavors, new genetics about to pop as well at some point. But what are you focused on right now? What are your current cultivars?
So right now we've got our Mulkey business, which is our Grease Mulkey Red Pop, which is real gassy, heavy indica, chronic couch lock.
Yeah.
Then our Zerpal Punch, which is the Skittles, Purple Punch, which is a fruity, more fruity kind of, 50-50. So a daytime kind of vibe. And then we've kind of combined those, which is a Zerpal syrup, which is the Zerpal Punch, the Zerpal with a strawberry syrup. So it's kind of a mix of a 50-50, so that, but still a real strong, but gassy, fruity kind of combo. So that's more sell combo. And then coming soon, we've got our Platinum Skywalker, which is a Skywalker OG.
Oh man, I haven't heard Skywalker in a while.
Yeah. We crossed that with Blue Java and the Platinum Girl Scout cookies. And it's got this wild coffee smell, and it's got heavy farnesing, which has got the chirp from coffee. So it's got this real unique flavor. And then a Purple Platinum, which is which will be our Zerpal Platinum Girl Scout cookie cross with Gorilla Glue, another heavy indica, and those are kind of what's coming down the pipe.
Wow. And so when it comes to terps, it's got to be easier to coax out through living soil and organics, is it not? Like, are you seeing, like, where are your terps registering across most of these cultivars?
Yeah, I mean, we've seen as high as 4.5. That's about as high as gone. But we're rolling around 3.5.
That's still high though, in the grand scheme of things. So. Like, you're hitting 2 is you can definitely tell. But when you hit 3.5, and much credit to VCC as well. Like, I love some of the stuff that they've done there. You start getting into those 3.5, 4%. It's like, buckle in, because the game changes at that point.
Totally, man. And I think, we really focus on our curateur. Our drying room is almost like a walk-in cooler. So we're just getting it down like 59, 58, just cold.
Yeah.
And then just keeping the humidity around the same thing, right? 59. So we're doing that. Don't want to go over 60. So 60 and 60 for 14 days, rotating. We hang on racks with the wheels. So we rotate the racks
Nice.
constantly. So we're just really focused on our cure, then lots of burping after that. And then the hand trim. And then, so again, just real attention to detail and real attention to craft and hands on,
Yeah, it seems like it. That's for sure. And where can the audience, because our audience is literally everywhere across Canada, but also, I'm sorry about anyone outside of Canada, unless, you can find it. Where is it available right now? Because you did mention that you've done some work with EastCann. So not all is lost if you can't find Kootenay's finest craft cannabis in your own province. But right now you're mainly BC, right?
Mainly BC, yeah, unfortunately. Monkey Business is in the Maritimes with EastCann. And then hopefully the Skywalker and the Purple Platinum will be out in the Maritimes pretty soon too. We've been talking.
So Wes, the only chance we've got is we're going out there, or we're coming to see Kevin, and we're gonna go golfing.
We're gonna go visit a Red Wings fan apparently.
We did Zerful Sunset last year with EastCann in Ontario. And that was well received, and we just moved on from that cultivar, and then but maybe some of this new stuff will be in Ontario with EastCann.
Yeah, that would be awesome. Yeah. Well, keep us in the loop on that. So, Kevin, one of the things that we've been doing, I don't know if you've caught this at all yet. We obviously don't expect that our guests have the time at all to tune in and watch any of these episodes, but we've been doing something fun where we have last week's guest pose a question to the incoming guest, which has been quite interesting. And then what we do is we have you pose a question to the next incoming guest, and you don't get to know who it is, and nor did last week's guest know who is coming in. So Wes, if you've got that question, this one came from Mr. Todd Nolt over at Rosin Heads.
Oh yeah, I watched that. That was a good one.
Did you see that? Yeah, Todd is man, he's awesome. He's awesome, and his products are awesome too.
So Todd's question last week, Kevin, for you was fairly broad one. Is if you could change one thing about this industry today for the better, what would it be?
Taxes, government regs. I think, I mean, that's a kind of a couple of answers, but it's kind of crazy. One thing, like we're regulated by Health Canada, which is insane. We should be with Ministry of Agriculture. We're an agricultural product. We're not a pharmaceutical. We're not making morphine here. We're not making Tylenol. And also like the CRA, like they are up our butt too. It's just the taxation, but also the audits and the
reporting. Oh my God.
Reporting. And it's like, I could be growing organic strawberries and spraying friggin' pesticide and fungus, you know what I mean? And people are eating it in the store, and then, wow, it's so, I'm not that saying I want to do that in Canada. But
but it is allowable in other agricultural products. That's the thing.
Just the regulation. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, that's a great answer. Thank you very much. And then, for next week's guest, you're not going to know who they are just yet. We know, but we'd like you to pose a question to them for next week. Could be, you don't know, maybe they're cannabis related. They might not be cannabis related, but a question for next week's guest could be anything.
All right, I got one for you. Do you care about organic cannabis? I'll let you bug people about that.
Okay.
That's a good question, just overall. And I think one I'm going to start posing to many people.
I mean, do you care about organic food? Like some people don't. I mean, you can't afford it. Yeah, I get it, man. You go to Safeway or you go to Whole Foods, but do you care about what you're smoking? What do you care about, what you're putting in your body? Do you care about,
I think there's an understanding and education to still take place even in the world of agricultural organic, right? Because there are certain thresholds and limitations that are allowed that still qualify as organic and agricultural product. And while we may purchase organic, it doesn't mean it's never been sprayed. It's what was sprayed and when and what was it trying to treat. And when we start to understand that, things change. Like even I don't care if it's organic. You know, the kids, they're the worst offenders. They could be, you know, we'll have organic cherries or strawberries or something in the fridge. And I'm like, you've got to wash those. If not for just the fact that people have handled them, you
Yeah,
need to
exactly.
wash them, right?
Totally,
Like, it's
totally.
just, oh, those are great. I'm like, yeah, plus all the, you know, 200 hands that just touched them. Like, how's
Yeah.
that taste? But I think there's a certain amount of education that still needs to happen. It seems that, you know, you're talking medical versus recreational, and there's, you know, I always come back to it's the same cannabis in the vast majority of cases coming out the facilities, and one goes over here in medical, and one is, you know, on the recreational market. We see the difference in the European markets, especially with the EU GMP requirements, et cetera. But, you know, in qualification for medical, show me a DIN, right? It's not replicable time and time and time again. Until you've got a drug identification number on it, we're still going to struggle, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. Kevin, it has been an absolute pleasure having you on Legacies and catching up. We want to do so in person when we can get out there. And I think we're going to have to spend a month because we've got so many awesome contacts and friends that we've made out there now.
Oh, yeah.
We want to go golfing.
Sure.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Well, we got to do a whole tour. Maybe we just set up shop for a month or something like that, and we'll do our thing out there.
Yeah. And there's also, I mean, in August, it's the Unicorn Cup. Jay, one of the founders of Antidote, and his farm is Rosebud Farms. They've got some products in Ontario, some live rosin, and some baked carts out there. He's a
Very cool.
amazing organic outdoor farmer, but he throws a big 3-day music cannabis festival called the Unicorn Cup in August, and
Wow.
DJs and Cannabis Cup and just all kinds of good times.
Sounds like our kind of jam.
Yeah,
There you go. Yep.
love it there.
For
Do
sure.
a little live broadcast from there or something.
Yeah, we can figure something out. Well, we certainly appreciate you taking the time to join. I know that it's difficult to run these facilities and how much time and effort it takes, especially wearing the QA hat. Kudos for that, because that's a thankless fucking job.
Oh, dude. I'm like, you know, I've got too many jobs, man. You know,
Yeah, for sure. Well, we appreciate you joining, Kevin. Thanks so much, man.
hey, it was my pleasure. And you know, when I first saw you guys' Legacy, I was like, Legacy podcast. I gotta jump on this.
Yeah, for sure.
As a kid, old school Legacy. You know,
Yeah, our favorite conversations for sure. Well, we appreciate
you
it.
guys. You know, shouting out to the Legacy and repping the Legacy too. So we appreciate that.
Yeah, of
Anytime.
course. Thank
Absolutely.
you. Hey friends, guess what? It's almost t-shirt season. Are you ready? You should be rocking your favorite brand. Head on over to thehighflyer.ca and check out all the licensed cannabis brand swag that we've got available. From Odo to Victoria Cannabis Company, Smoker Farms, Royal Harvest, the list goes on. And there's more coming on every single week. Check it out, add it to your cart, and be prepped. Sun's out, guns out. Well, there we have it. Kootenay's finest. Tell me that doesn't make you want some living soil organic cannabis.
I think Kootenay's my new favorite word. I've heard it so many times. Now it just really it comes off the tongue so nicely.
Was there a
Kootenays.
beer? Kootenay beer? Was there a beer from?
I
can't remember. I thought there was one. I'll have to think back. That's going back quite a ways. I thought there was a BC. It wasn't a craft beer. It was a commercial brand. Something to do with Kootenay. I don't know.
Huh.
Maybe I'm going crazy. Could be. I'm just hearing Kootenay so much lately that. But certainly want to get my hands on the product and try that one now.
Book a flight.
Yeah, book a flight, man. I think we need a satellite studio out there, and we can just fly out every once in a while and have these guests in person and sample the fantastic products. And it's not to say that there aren't fantastic products across Canada. Every week is just, oh my God, now I got to try that one. I got to try that.
Yeah,
one.
we have some on-sites to do.
Yeah, for sure.
Gotta happen.
For sure. Great episode though. You know, Kevin, obviously legend, OG, cut his teeth in those early days. Experience. I love the hiding under a log while there's a helicopter hovering above. Like, Jesus.
It's funny because sometimes, like we've spoken to some individuals who have been through the legacy market transition and all that stuff, and obviously they've been doing this for so long that you could see it in them that it's like they're worn down. They're still doing it. They're still pushing the fight, but they're very worn down. Yeah. Kevin doesn't seem that way to me. No. Kevin gives off the, unless he's just hiding it, but he's clearly been through some shit, but he's still like, upbeat and kind of, fresh, it seems. Fresh is the word I'll use. Yeah.
For sure. Well, it's been a great episode, but we still have some time left on Cush Mountain. Walk us through what's going on there.
We do. For those who have not seen it, head over to our Instagram. You have the chance to win the biggest swag bundle we've given away so far, courtesy of Cush Mountain. Cush Mountain is going to be available in Ontario as of June 6th. So by the time you see this, it should be available. The giveaway ends at the end of the day on June 6th. So go there. We want you to tag your favorite retailer or dispensary in Canada that you would like to, in Ontario, that you would like to see carrying Cush Mountain products. So make sure you tag them. And that's the only thing you need to do. It's obviously open for Canadian residents only, but tag your favorite retailer and you have the opportunity to win, get completely swagged out by Cush Mountain. So we're talking sweater, tank top, shirt. There's a couple things in there. Biggest bundle we've done. So get
Big
over there
package.
and tag a retailer.
Yeah, and that's the thing. So available June 6th on OCS. Wholesale, that's when retailers can start ordering it. OCS.ca, I think, is June 20th. But I am so excited. I can't wait. I'm going to monitor all my retail locations that are closest to me. I'll travel if need be. But maybe we'll do something special if we can figure out the first retailer to place an order for their product.
Yes.
That'd be fun. Anyways,
yeah, that'd be fun.
been a great episode. Love the studio days. Lots of work for you now. But anyways.
Post-production. Maybe we'll do one day we'll do a behind the scenes, but not yet.
Yeah. The craziness that has to happen to get this off. Yeah. Thanks for joining Legacies, everyone. We'll see you next week.